The day I punched through that window, I didn't know I was dragging a billionaire back to her future. I just knew there was smoke, glass, and a pair of eyes that looked at me like I was the last solid thing left in the world. Most mornings start the same for me, and I've learned to be grateful for that kind of quiet. The alarm goes off at 4:45 a.m. A cheap digital chirp I keep on the far end of the dresser, so I have to cross the room to kill it. The apartment is cool and still. I stand a moment, listening. When you've spent years climbing outside of perfect glass with a city under your boots, your brain learns to measure silence. You know if the day is going to be a talker or a listener. That morning, the silence felt like a friend. I move through my little kitchen in socks so I don't wake Lily. Coffee goes into the old stainless thermos that's more dent than shine now. Harness bag, helmet, gloves, laid out by the door the night before, because I've already lived too many mornings trying to find a missing carabiner at 5 a.m. I scribble a note for my daughter and stick it to a cereal box on the counter. Back by 6. You're braver than any superhero. Dad. She collects them in a jar with a rubber band stretched around it twice. Sometimes I catch her reading them out loud to herself, like they're spells. She's 9 and small for her age, but she's got this laugh that fills the whole room like summer. I step onto the balcony for the weather. Seattle's got that smell in the early hours. Cold concrete, wet pine, a faint sharpness from the sound that threads through the buildings. The sky is a dark blue sheet, just beginning to gray at the edges. Down on the street, a delivery truck hisses to a stop, air brakes, sighing like a tired dog. I lift the harness bag, lock the door, and the day begins. At the yard, the guys are already buzzing around the work van like bees. You can tell who's new by how they talk. Loud, fast, stacking bravado on top of jokes. The old heads, we talk with our hands. We check straps, lines, knots. We pull on the rope with our whole bodies, feeling for hidden stories. Phrase that weren't frayed yesterday. Stiffness where there should be give. It's the kind of work that chews up attention and spits it back shaped like discipline. Bennett, my foreman says, clapping my shoulder as I pass. Glass spire tower today. 43 down through 35. Wind's decent. Stay with the schedule. Copy, I say. I always say copy, like I'm still on a radio even when he's right in front of me. Habit has kept me alive more times than luck. I flick my phone screen while we idle at a red light and see a message from Lily's teacher. Hi, Mr. Bennett. Reminder about the art competition registration. $45 fee due by Friday, or Lily won't be able to submit. She's worked so hard. Let me know if you need anything. I stare at the number like it's a tall step I should be able to climb. It's not that I don't have $45. It's that everything is $45, and it all arrives the same week. New sneakers, milk, rent, engine light, a field trip that wasn't on the calendar. I type back, got it. Thank you. Then I add a second text to Lily to land when she wakes. Don't worry about the fee. I'll handle it. You just make something beautiful. She'll send back a selfie with bed hair and 2 thumbs up. She always does. The girl could be standing in a hurricane and still give you a thumbs up. Her mother taught her that, grit masked as warmth. There's not a day I don't hear my wife's voice when I lace my boots. She's been gone long enough that memories got quiet, but some mornings they lean over and retie my knots. We roll up to the base of Glass Spire just before 7. It's a show-off of a building. Angles that make the sky look like it's been folded, glass that turns the whole city into a reflection of itself. I sign the paperwork, clip on, and run the safety checklist twice. The crew jokes about me being the preacher because I recite the steps like a prayer. You respect gravity, or it reminds you why. The platform groans as we feed the ropes over pulleys. I step on, plant my boots, and feel the small tremor that goes through the metal like a heartbeat. First descent is always a negotiation. Me and the wind, me and the height, me and whatever I didn't bring to the day. The radio crackles at my shoulder. My partner, Javier, is on the other rig 10 panes over. Morning sermon finished, he says. Amen. I answer, thumb on the push to talk. Let's make it pretty. We go down the first stretch easy. Squeegee, water, pull, wipe. It's a rhythm that unknots the mind. Below us, buses thread intersections, tiny beads sliding along invisible strings. Up here, it's just the whisper of the brush, the squeal when rubber meets clean glass, the soft slap of the bucket against the platform with each shift of weight. If you want to listen to yourself think, hang 1,000 feet over your problems. It makes them honest. My phone buzzes in the chest pocket of my jacket. I angle the rig to a stop and fish it out, careful to keep the tether clipped so it doesn't ricochet into a lawsuit. It's an audio message from Lily. Daddy, don't forget. Friday. And also I made the cat look like it's wearing a raincoat. You'll see. Okay, love you, bye. I grin like an idiot at a city that has no interest in me. Copy that. I tell the sky. Then I clip the phone back, breathe, and tap the descent control. Somewhere around the 43rd floor, the light changes, redder, heavier. It's small at first, like a smudge in the corner of your eye. I blink, tilt my head, and the smudge breathes. At first, I thought it was a reflection, maybe the sunrise hitting the glass at an odd angle. But no sunrise ever moved like that. The smudge pulsed, darkened, and suddenly I realized it was smoke, curling and thinning against the inside of the pane. My stomach tightened the way it always does when instinct beats logic to the finish line. Javi, I said into the radio, check your side. You see that? 43, northeast corner. Static. No reply. Javi, copy. Still nothing. I tapped the earpiece, craned my neck to the side, and scanned the building's surface. His platform was there, 2 panels over, but hanging still, unmoving. Maybe his radio died. Maybe he'd gone for a snack. I didn't have time to wonder. The smoke thickened, and that's when I saw her. A woman, maybe mid-30s, maybe 40s. It's hard to say when panic distorts every feature. She was pounding on the inside of the glass, mouth open, screaming something I couldn't hear through the sealed facade. Behind her, a line of fire was crawling up the wall, eating through paper, plastic, and shadow. The light inside her office flickered, then died. I felt my pulse climb into my throat. Training says, call it in, wait for emergency services, never enter a compromised zone alone. But experience, the kind that doesn't come from manuals, said, she doesn't have minutes to wait. I dropped the radio and slammed the emergency stop on the winch, freezing the platform in place. The wind tugged at my jacket, impatient, as I unhooked the hammer from the side rail. It's not meant for breaking windows. It's meant for knocking loose bolts and scraping buildup. But it's metal, and metal means chance. Through the glass, her hands pressed flat. White knuckles, skin slick with sweat. Our eyes met for the first time, and that's when something changed in me. Up until then, she was a stranger in a fire. But in that heartbeat, she became someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone who hadn't yet told her story to whoever waited for her at home. I'd buried enough people to know what those eyes meant. Hang on, I shouted, though she couldn't hear me. My own voice sounded small against the wind. I swung the hammer. Once. Twice. The glass shuddered but didn't give. Tempered, double pane, meant to survive storms, not people like me. I swung again, harder. Sparks of pain shot through my wrist. On the 5th hit, a crack spidered out, slicing across the window like lightning frozen in place. I used the crowbar from the tool rack to wedge into that crack, leaned in, and felt it buckle. When it finally burst, the sound wasn't glass. It was a scream. Heat punched through the opening, thick with the chemical burn of carpet, plastic, and paper ash. Smoke poured out, wrapping around me. I coughed, ducked, pulled the mask from my kit, and crawled inside. It was chaos. The ceiling tiles had started to collapse, sprinklers were failing, and the air tasted like rust and fear. She was slumped near the desk now, half-conscious. I grabbed her arm, but she flinched. Instinct, pure panic. It's okay, I yelled. I've got you. Her voice cracked. I can't breathe. I tore my spare mask from the belt, pressed it over her mouth, and pulled the strap tight. Her eyes flickered, locking on mine. I looped the safety line around her waist, hooking it to my harness. Every muscle in my body screamed as I dragged her across the broken glass, knees sliding in soot and melted carpet. By the time I reached the hole again, my lungs were begging for air. The wind outside howled like it knew what I was trying to do. I pushed her through the opening first, gripping her with one arm and guiding the rope with the other until she was safely on the platform. She coughed violently, then went still. Stay with me, I said, slapping her cheek lightly. Hey, come on, lady. Stay with me. Below us, sirens started wailing. Fire trucks converged at the base, flashing red bouncing off the tower's surface. Someone must have seen us from the street. I waved my arm once before another wave of smoke filled my mouth. I pulled her closer, feeling her pulse under my fingertips, weak but steady. Minutes later, A rescue lift rose like a slow-moving promise from below. I passed her into waiting arms, firefighters shouting orders I couldn't hear. My own vision tunneled. The adrenaline that had carried me this far began to fade, replaced by a deep, heavy calm that felt suspiciously like sleep. The last thing I remember was a voice, maybe mine, maybe someone else's, saying, "Tell my daughter I'm okay." Then the world tilted backward into black. When I came to, the world was wrapped in white. White sheets, white walls, white noise humming from some machine beside me. My first breath hit like sandpaper, each inhale tugging against the bandage wrapped across my ribs. I blinked at the ceiling until the blur took shape. Hospital. I tried to sit up, and pain shot through my chest like a warning. A nurse appeared from nowhere, her voice soft but firm. "Easy, Mr. Bennett. You inhaled a lot of smoke. You're lucky to be awake." "Where?" My throat cracked. "Where's the woman?" "She's fine," the nurse said. "You saved her life." I closed my eyes, exhaling slow. It was the first time the word fine had meant something I could believe in. "And my daughter?" I croaked. "Lily, did someone tell her I'm okay?" A voice from behind answered before she could. "She's on her way, sir. Your crew called her school. She's got quite the story to tell her friends now." The man wore a fire marshal's badge clipped to his belt. His face carried that calm professional kindness of someone who's seen too many bad endings. "You did something extraordinary today." I shook my head. "I did my job." He smiled faintly. "Your job's to clean glass, not break through it and haul people out of a fire. But hey, I'm not complaining. Rest up, Bennett." He left me with that line, and the room grew quiet again except for the steady beep of the monitor. I stared at the 4-tube taped to my arm, watching the fluid drip like time slowing down. In the silence, I thought of Lily. How I'd promised her I'd be home by 6. How she'd probably sat on the couch, sketchbook in her lap, waiting for the key in the door that never came. It must have been late afternoon when she finally burst into the room. Hair messy, backpack hanging off one shoulder, tears already on her cheeks. "Daddy." She ran straight to the bed, hugging me around the stomach as gently as she could. "They said you were in a fire. Are you okay? You smell weird." I laughed, wincing at the pull in my side. "Yeah, that's the smell of bravery, kiddo. Don't tell anyone. It's supposed to be secret." She giggled through her tears. "You scared me." I scared myself. I brushed her hair back, feeling her heartbeat through the hug. "But I'm here, and you're here, and that's enough." The nurse came back with some forms, smiling at the reunion. "You've got visitors lining up, Mr. Bennett. News reporters, too." I told them you're resting. "Good," I said. "Tell them I'm not interested." I didn't do it for cameras. A few days passed before I was discharged. I avoided the news, but there was no hiding from it completely. The story had made local headlines. "Window cleaner saves CO in high-rise blaze." They'd used some old ID photo of me, helmet and all, like a mugshot for decency. Every channel played the same clip of the building with smoke pouring out and a helicopter shot of 2 small figures hanging outside the 43rd floor. The internet called me the man on the ledge. I turned the TV off after that. I wasn't built for fame. By the 4th day home, Lily had stuck drawings all over the fridge. Me with a cape, me with a big hammer, me with a smile too wide for my real face. I told her to stop making me look like a superhero. She said, "Then stop doing superhero stuff." Fair point. The call came that Friday evening. A woman's voice, calm, deliberate, with a trace of warmth under the surface. "Mr. Bennett, this is Amelia Stanton. I'm the woman you rescued." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The name sounded familiar, Stanton, like the company logo printed on half the buildings in Seattle. "I'm glad you're okay," I managed. "That's all that matters." "I'd like to thank you in person," she said. "If you're comfortable with that. My assistant can arrange transportation." I hesitated. I'd had enough of attention to last a lifetime. But something in her tone wasn't about publicity. It was human, simple. "All right," I said. "I can come by after my shift Monday." "Good," she replied softly. "And, Mr. Bennett, you saved more than my life that day. You reminded me what one looks like." When the call ended, I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at the steam curling off my coffee. The city outside my window hummed as if nothing had changed, but everything had. I'd gone to work to make glass shine. I'd come home, realizing some reflections show more than just your face. I'll be honest, I didn't know what to expect walking into that building again. The glass spire tower stood the same as always, gleaming against the gray Seattle sky, as if nothing had happened. But to me, it looked different now, not just steel and glass, but a reminder that life could shift in one heartbeat. I wore my best shirt. It wasn't saying much. Dark blue, no stains, pressed the night before with the old iron that sputters when it's had enough. Lily insisted I wear her lucky pin, a little enamel star she won at school. It helped me win the spelling bee, she said. Now I can help you not say anything dumb. Thanks, kiddo, I told her, pocketing it. That's comforting. The receptionist greeted me like I was royalty. Mr. Bennett, Miss Stanton is expecting you. Her tone had that careful mixture of respect and curiosity, the kind people use when they've seen your face on TV but can't decide if you're a hero or a headline. She led me through a hallway lined with polished stone and art that probably cost more than my apartment lease. Then, the door opened to an office I recognized for all the wrong reasons. Sunlight streamed through a wall of new glass, so clear it almost hurt to look at. The faint smell of fresh paint lingered in the air. There were new floors, new furniture, but in my head, I still saw the smoke, the broken desk, the fire crawling across the ceiling. It was like walking through a dream that had already burned down. Amelia Stanton stood near the window, arms crossed loosely, her reflection doubled against the skyline. She turned when I entered, offering a faint smile. Noah Bennett, she said. I was hoping I'd get to thank you in person. I nodded once. Glad you're okay, ma'am. She walked closer, and for the first time, I got a clear look at her. Late 30s, maybe. Sharp, composed, every movement deliberate. But there was something fragile under the surface, the kind of vulnerability people spend money trying to hide. A small bandage still marked the side of her temple. Would you like some coffee? She asked. Or water? Water's fine. She poured it herself, not the kind of woman who waited for assistants to do everything. Then she sat across from me, folding her hands neatly. I've read your file, she said with a smile. You've been cleaning windows here for nearly 9 years. 8.5, I corrected. Since before this tower even opened. That's rare loyalty, she said. Most people move on. I shrugged. Some of us like a steady rope. For a second, she almost laughed. You know, the doctors told me I wouldn't have lasted 3 more minutes. The fire started behind the vent system, completely silent. No alarm triggered. By the time I realized, I couldn't open the door. If you hadn't been there. Her voice trailed off, and she looked out the window again, eyes glinting. I followed her gaze. The same city, but from up here, it looked smaller. People like us rarely stand at the same height. You don't owe me anything, I said. You had a bad day, that's all. I just happened to be outside your window. She turned back to me slowly. That's not how I see it. A long silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with everything words couldn't quite balance. Finally, she reached into a drawer and slid an envelope across the desk. I didn't touch it. Inside, she said, is a full scholarship for your daughter. Any school in the state. And a new position here, safer, with better hours. Building safety management. I stared at it, then at her. You don't have to. I want to, she interrupted gently. This isn't charity, Mr. Bennett. It's recognition. I let out a breath, shaking my head. Ma'am, I didn't save you for a reward. I saved you because I could. For a moment, something softened in her expression. Respect, maybe. Or something quieter. She nodded once and withdrew her hand from the envelope. Then take it as a thank you from one stubborn person to another. I stood up, tucking my hands into my jacket pockets. You seem like someone who doesn't hear no very often. Not from people who just carried me out of a burning building, she said, half smiling. But I'll make an exception. As I left her office, I caught my reflection in that spotless new window. A man in a borrowed shirt, a little girl's pin in his pocket, and a second chance he hadn't asked for waiting on a billionaire's desk. On the elevator ride down, I thought about what she said. You reminded me what a life looks like. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but maybe she wasn't just talking about hers. A month passed before I heard from Amelia Stanton again. Life had mostly gone back to normal, or whatever passes for normal after you've seen fire crawling toward you from the other side of a glass wall. I was back on the ropes, wiping down windows on smaller buildings now, by choice. The quiet had a different weight to it. It wasn't peace anymore. It was something closer to reflection. Every day after work, I'd meet Lily outside school. She'd jump into my arms and talk nonstop about her art, her teachers, and a field trip to the aquarium. She'd started sketching whales lately, big sweeping lines of gray and blue. I asked her why whales, and she said, because they're heavy but gentle. Kind of like you. That one stayed with me. I didn't think much about Amelia after that meeting. To be honest, I figured our paths had crossed for the last time. She was a woman from a world where meetings came with bottled water and signatures that could buy cities. I was a man whose best suit still smelled faintly of industrial cleaner. Some stories don't need sequels. Then, one Thursday morning, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. A crisp, polite voice said, "Mr. Bennett, this is Diane Clark, Ms. Stanton's assistant. She'd like to speak with you at your earliest convenience." I paused, holding my coffee midair. About what? She didn't say, sir. Only that it was important. An hour later, I found myself walking into the Stanton Innovations headquarters again. Same polished marble floors, same scent of fresh espresso and ambition. This time, Amelia was waiting by the reception desk herself, smiling like she'd been standing there a while. "Mr. Bennett," she said warmly. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," I said, adjusting the strap on my old work bag. "What's going on?" She gestured toward a conference room. The walls were glass, overlooking the city. Ironic, really. We sat, and she folded her hands on the table. "I've been thinking about something you said that day." "Which part?" "You told me you didn't save me for a reward. You saved me because you could." I nodded slowly. "That's still true. That's exactly why I'm calling you," she said. "Because that kind of mindset, doing what's right without waiting for applause, is rare. It's the kind of integrity this company could use more of." I frowned. "I'm not sure I follow." Amelia leaned forward slightly. "After the fire, I started reviewing our safety protocols across all properties. What I found was embarrassing. Too many shortcuts, too much complacency. People trusting systems instead of people. I need someone who's lived the consequences of what happens when systems fail." "And you think that's me?" I asked, half smiling. "I'm a guy with a rope and a bucket." Her tone didn't waver. "You're also a man who stayed calm at 1,000 feet with his life and mine on the line. You saw a problem, acted, and didn't stop to count the risk. That's exactly who I need overseeing building safety across our properties." I stared at her for a long second. "You're offering me a job?" She nodded. "Director of Facilities Safety. Full benefits, flexible hours, salary well above your current pay." She smiled slightly. "And before you say it, yes, it's a big leap. But I've already arranged training and mentorship if you want it." It took me a moment to find my voice. "That's a lot to think about." "Take your time," she said softly. "But know this. I trust people who act when no one's watching. You did that. You could have ignored what you saw. You didn't." I sat back, the words sinking in like water through dust. For years, I'd worked high above the city, invisible to most of it. And now someone who owned half of that skyline was asking me to step inside, to look down from a different height. Finally, I said, "You know, I always told my daughter that courage isn't about climbing high. It's about doing the right thing even when no one will see." Amelia's eyes softened. "Then maybe it's time the world did see." We talked a while longer, details, logistics, the kind of stuff that usually makes my head spin. When I left that building, the afternoon light bounced off the glass, and for the first time, I saw my reflection next to hers in that surface. Two different lives, somehow aligned by one moment of fire. At home, Lily greeted me with paint on her hands and hope in her eyes. "How was work, Daddy?" I smiled. "Funny thing about work, kiddo, it might be changing. It's strange how quickly life can settle into a new rhythm once you stop fighting the idea that you deserve something better." By the time I officially started the new position, the summer clouds had rolled in over Seattle, turning the skyline into a soft watercolor. I wasn't cleaning glass anymore. I was the one making sure others did it safely. The first time I signed off a safety audit under my name, I stared at the paper longer than I should have. It felt heavier than any rope I'd ever held. The guys from my old crew couldn't stop teasing me. "Look at you now, Mr. Big Shot Director." Javi laughed over the phone one night. "Better not forget us ground floor folks." "Trust me," I said. "I'm still the guy who packs his own lunch." But truthfully, it was hard not to feel the difference. The office had its own kind of altitude, air that smelled of polished wood and filtered coffee instead of ammonia and rain. Meetings replaced dissents, reports replaced buckets. Yet there was one thing I refused to change. Every Friday morning, I'd still ride the lift to the top of a building and step outside onto the maintenance deck, just to feel the wind hit my face. It reminded me who I was before titles started following my name. Lily noticed the change too. She'd started at a private art academy that fall, thanks to the scholarship Amelia had quietly arranged. The first time she walked through those glass doors with her sketchbook pressed to her chest, she turned to me and said, "Dad, I'm nervous. Everyone here looks rich." I knelt beside her and smiled. "Then draw better than them. Talent doesn't care how much money your shoes cost." She grinned, hugged me tight, and ran inside. I stood there for a while, watching her disappear into a world she'd earned but never expected. I kept my distance from Amelia for the first few weeks of the new role. She was the boss, after all, and I wasn't used to mingling with people who discussed investment rounds instead of tool budgets. But every now and then, she'd stop by my office, cup of tea in hand, asking questions about how things looked from the practical side. She listened, really listened, which was rare in a place where most people just waited for their turn to talk. One afternoon, she invited me to join her on the roof of the newly finished Stanton Research Center, her company's newest skyscraper, 70 stories of ambition dressed in mirrored glass. "I figured you might appreciate the view," she said. We rode up in silence. When the elevator doors opened, the city stretched out beneath us. Cranes, ferries, cars like silver ants threading the veins of the streets. The wind was cool, carrying that faint salt smell from Elliott Bay. "You know," she said, stepping to the edge, "before the fire, I used to look out at this view and only see control. All the numbers, the growth charts, the plans. I thought that was what mattered." She turned to me, her hair moving in the breeze. "But when everything was burning, all I wanted was one more chance to see the sky." I nodded slowly. "Funny, when I was hanging out there that day, all I wanted was to get back down to the ground." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the balance of it, then. You remind me what it means to stand on something solid, and I remind you to look up." We stood there for a while without talking, just the hum of the city below and the quiet between two people who'd been through something unspoken together. Before we left, she looked at me and said, "Noah, if you ever get tired of managing safety, there's always room here for someone who sees people the way you do." I didn't answer right away. I just looked out at the glass towers catching the late light, each one reflecting another, as if the city were trying to remember its own face. When I got home that night, Lily was sitting on the floor surrounded by paintbrushes and half-finished sketches. She looked up and asked, "Dad, are you still afraid of heights?" I smiled, kneeling beside her. "I was never afraid of heights, kiddo. I was just waiting to see who needed me to come down." She grinned, and for a second, I saw her mother's warmth flicker in her eyes. I realized then that sometimes the hardest climbs bring you right back to where your heart was always meant to land. Solid ground, a safe home, and someone waiting with open arms. People like to call me a hero. Reporters did, neighbors did, even strangers on the internet who never met me. But the truth is, heroes are just people who act before they have time to think of a reason not to. That day on the tower didn't change who I was. It just reminded me who I'd always been. A man who keeps his promises. A father who tries to show his daughter that courage isn't loud and goodness doesn't need applause. Sometimes I still think about that moment. The fire reflecting off the glass, her hands on the other side of the window, the noise of it all, and then the silence afterward. Not the silence of fear, but of clarity. That quiet space where you realize life doesn't owe you anything, and yet it still gives you a chance to do something right. Every time I walk past Glasspire now, I look up and see the sun bouncing off the windows, and it hits me. That tower isn't just where my life almost ended. It's where it began again. Lily's art hangs on our living room wall now, a painting of a man on a platform surrounded by clouds. She titled it "Bravery Looks Down, too." I think she understands what that means better than I ever could. So if there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this. You don't need a skyscraper or a headline to be brave. You just need one moment where you decide that someone else's life matters as much as your own. And when that moment comes, don't look away. Would you have done what I did? Tell me in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine.